Hello, my beautiful Taurus. This reading feels different right away. There is a heaviness here, but it is not the kind of heaviness that comes from anger. It feels like realization. It feels like somebody finally understanding what they had only after the silence became impossible to ignore. I'm seeing the Six of Cups immediately, and honestly, this person keeps drifting back to memories. Little things, random things, the way you laughed, the way you listened, the way you made them feel, understood without needing 100 explanations. It feels as though they got so used to your presence that they started treating it like something that would always be there. You know what I'm hearing? I thought there would always be another chance. That keeps coming through. Because I feel like this person genuinely believed that no matter how much distance grew between you, Taurus would still be there. Taurus would still answer. Taurus would still care. Taurus would still wait. And maybe for a while that was true. But something shifted. I'm picking up on a version of you that got tired of carrying the connection alone. Not angry, not dramatic, just tired. The moment you started pulling your energy back and focusing on yourself, this person's entire perspective began to change. Okay, because now we have the moon showing up. And with the moon here, I keep feeling confusion coming from their side. Not your side, theirs. They are questioning everything. They are replaying conversations, replaying decisions, replaying moments where they could have said something but didn't. Moments where they could have reached out but stayed silent. Oh my God. Some of them are even questioning whether they misunderstood your love completely. Because I don't think they expected your silence. They expected frustration. They expected arguments. They expected another attempt to fix things. What they did not expect was peace. And that peace is haunting them. There is something incredibly powerful about a Taurus who decides to stop chasing. Because when Taurus loves, they invest. They nurture. They stay. They try. So when Taurus becomes quiet, people notice. And this person noticed. More than they would ever admit. I'm seeing the Page of Swords here, and honestly, it feels like somebody who cannot stop checking on you. Maybe through social media, maybe through mutual friends, maybe through random conversations where your name somehow keeps appearing. You know when somebody tells themselves they are over it, but then they keep looking? Yeah, that is exactly what this feels like. Because the truth is, they are curious. They want to know if you are happy. They want to know if somebody else has your attention. They want to know if they still matter. And every time they don't find an answer, they think even more. This person is spending a lot of time in their own head. Late nights, long drives, moments where everything becomes quiet and there is nowhere left to run from their thoughts. And every road somehow leads back to you. Back to what they lost. Back to what they failed to appreciate when it was right in front of them. The Five of Cups feels incredibly emotional here. Not because this person suddenly became vulnerable overnight. It feels emotional because regret has finally caught up with them. I keep hearing, why didn't I say something? Why didn't I try harder? Why did I assume they would always stay? And Taurus, I feel like this realization did not happen all at once. It happened slowly, one memory at a time, one lonely moment at a time, one reminder at a time, until suddenly they found themselves unable to stop thinking about you, unable to stop comparing everyone else to you, unable to stop wondering whether they made the biggest mistake of their life. What feels important is that this person is starting to see your value in a way they never fully did before. Not because you changed, because you stopped proving it. You stopped convincing. You stopped carrying the entire emotional weight of the connection. And now, they are being forced to sit with the reality of what your absence actually feels like. Something about this energy tells me their thoughts are becoming louder every day. Almost like there is a conversation building inside them that they can no longer avoid. And what starts happening next feels very different from everything that came before. I'm seeing the Eight of Pentacles come forward. And honestly, this energy feels very different from somebody who is simply sitting around feeling sorry for themselves. There is regret here, yes. There is longing here, absolutely. But there is also effort. Something about this person feels focused, almost obsessed. Not obsessed with controlling you, obsessed with becoming someone they believe deserves another chance. Okay, because I keep hearing this phrase, I can't come back the same way I left. That feels important. It feels as though this person understands that missing you is not enough. Thinking about you all day is not enough. Wanting you is not enough. They know something has to change. And for many of you, I feel like that change started the moment they realized you were no longer organizing your life around them. You know what I'm seeing? Somebody checking on you from a distance and noticing that your world did not fall apart without them. Oh my God. That realization hit harder than they expected. Because there was a time when this person thought they had more time, more opportunities, more chances to figure things out, more chances to delay difficult conversations. The moment they saw you becoming stronger on your own, something inside them shifted. The Eight of Pentacles keeps showing me someone who is putting pieces together behind the scenes. Work, finances, responsibilities, personal goals, healing. Whatever was unstable in their life before, they are trying to improve it. And I don't feel like they're doing this because somebody told them to. I feel like they are doing it because they keep imagining what it would feel like to stand in front of you again. That thought alone seems to motivate them. The King of Pentacles is standing here, and wow, this energy feels incredibly grounded. This does not feel like somebody rushing toward you with dramatic promises. It doesn't feel impulsive. It doesn't feel reckless. It feels deliberate, slow, careful, measured. I feel like this person has spent a lot of time looking at their own shortcomings, looking at the things they avoided, looking at the responsibilities they pushed aside. Because I keep getting the feeling that one of their biggest fears was not rejection, it was inadequacy. They worried they wouldn't be enough, not successful enough, not stable enough, not ready enough, not healed enough. And instead of admitting those fears, they pulled away. They delayed, they distracted themselves, they convinced themselves there would always be another day, another month, another opportunity. Yet every day that passes seems to make them think about you more. The Two of Wands feels incredibly interesting here because this person keeps standing at a crossroads. I don't feel confusion anymore. I feel preparation. There is a difference. Confusion creates circles. Preparation creates movement. And this person feels like somebody who is slowly preparing themselves for a decision they already know they want to make. I'm picking up on somebody imagining conversations before they happen, practicing words, thinking about what they would say, thinking about what you would say, thinking about how much has changed, you know. Some of them might appear completely calm on the outside. Meanwhile, their mind is constantly running through possibilities, constantly trying to figure out how to bridge the distance, how to explain themselves, how to show growth without sounding like they're making excuses. Because they know actions matter, especially with Taurus. The star is shining over this entire energy. And honestly, this feels very emotional. Not dramatic emotional, hopeful emotional. It feels as though this person never fully let go of the idea that something meaningful still exists between the two of you. Even during periods when communication was limited, even when pride got involved, even when fear got involved, there was always something inside them quietly holding on, something that refused to disappear. I keep seeing them thinking about future moments, simple moments, sitting together, talking, laughing, feeling comfortable again. Those images seem to appear in their mind unexpectedly, while they're working, while they're driving, while they're trying to focus on something else. You show up anyway. Your energy shows up anyway. And what fascinates me about this reading is that the more this person works on themselves, the more impossible it becomes for them to pretend they don't care. Because growth has a funny way of exposing the truth. The stronger they become, the more honest they become with themselves. The more honest they become with themselves, the harder it becomes to ignore what their heart has been trying to tell them all along. Something deeper is starting to surface here, something that feels much bigger than simple regret. And the cards unfolding after this seem to be revealing exactly why this connection changed them so profoundly. I'm picking up on a completely different energy surrounding this person. The noise that used to distract them doesn't seem to work anymore. The excuses don't feel as convincing. The avoidance doesn't feel as comfortable. There is a moment here where somebody is being forced to sit alone with their own truth. And honestly, that feels bigger than anything else showing up in this reading. The Hermit appears, and immediately I get the feeling of someone spending a lot more time in reflection than they ever planned to. You know, sometimes life gets quiet on purpose. Not because nothing is happening, but because there are lessons that can't be learned in a crowded room. This person feels like they've been living inside their own thoughts, questions, memories, regrets, realizations. The kind of realizations that arrive unexpectedly. The kind that hit while you're staring at the ceiling at 2 in the morning. The kind that show up when you're driving somewhere familiar and suddenly think about somebody you haven't stopped missing. I feel like this person spent a long time trying to convince themselves that they were fine, that they could move on, that they could focus on other things, that enough time would eventually make everything disappear. Yet the more time passed, the more obvious something became. You never disappeared from their heart. Judgment is standing here, and wow, this feels incredibly powerful. Because what I'm seeing is somebody waking up. Not waking up to you, waking up to themselves, waking up to their patterns, waking up to the ways they sabotaged things, waking up to the fears that controlled their decisions. For some of you, I honestly feel like this person is looking back at old versions of themselves and barely recognizing who they used to be. There is a level of accountability here. Not perfect accountability, not complete accountability, but enough to create change, enough to create awareness, enough to make them stop blaming circumstances for everything that happened. You know what keeps coming through? I handled that wrong. That sentence feels very important, because before this realization, I think it was easier for them to focus on what everyone else did, what life did, what timing did, what distance did, what circumstances did. The moment judgment arrived, the focus shifted. Suddenly they started looking inward. Suddenly they started asking harder questions. Questions that don't always have comfortable answers. Questions about why they pulled away. Questions about why they hesitated. Questions about why they ran from something that actually mattered. Death is sitting right beside this energy, and honestly, it feels like a chapter ending inside of them. Not a relationship chapter, an internal chapter, a mindset, a belief system, a version of themselves that could hide from emotions. A version of themselves that could pretend feelings weren't real. Because I feel like they tried. Oh, they definitely tried. They tried to rationalize everything. They tried to minimize what they felt. They tried to stay busy, tried to stay distracted, tried to stay detached. Yet every road somehow brought them back to the same place. Back to you. Back to what they felt. Back to what they never fully acknowledged. I'm seeing moments where this person catches themselves smiling at a memory and then immediately feeling emotional afterward. Almost like their heart knows something their mind spent a long time denying. And that denial seems to be disappearing. Temperance feels beautiful here because it shows me somebody learning balance for the first time. Not balance in their schedule, balance in their emotional world, balance between fear and desire, balance between protecting themselves and opening themselves. Because for a long time, fear was winning. Fear made the decisions. Fear controlled the pace. Fear controlled the distance. Fear controlled the silence. What feels different now is that longing has become stronger than fear. The desire to understand this connection has become stronger than the desire to escape it. The desire to be honest has become stronger than the desire to hide. Okay, this is interesting, because I'm starting to feel that this person is no longer asking themselves whether they care. That question seems answered. The question becoming louder now sounds more like, what do I do with everything I finally understand? And honestly, the cards waiting underneath this spread seem to suggest that understanding is only the beginning of a much deeper truth they haven't fully spoken out loud yet. I'm seeing something becoming very difficult for this person to carry anymore. It feels less like heartbreak and more like the weight of untold truths. You know when somebody spends so much time avoiding a conversation that eventually the silence becomes heavier than the words themselves? That is exactly what this energy feels like. The Seven of Swords is sitting here, and immediately I'm picking up on somebody who was never fully transparent about what was happening inside of them. Not because they didn't feel anything, quite the opposite, because they felt too much. I know that sounds strange, but it feels as though this person convinced themselves that hiding was safer than revealing, safer than admitting how attached they had become, safer than admitting how much influence you had over their emotions, safer than admitting that you mattered far more than they ever intended. Okay, this is interesting, because I don't actually feel like they were trying to fool you as much as they were trying to fool themselves, trying to act unaffected, trying to act detached, trying to act independent. Meanwhile, their thoughts kept circling back to the same person, the same connection, the same unanswered feelings. And every time those emotions surfaced, they would push them back down again. You know, some people are afraid of rejection. This person feels afraid of exposure, afraid of being truly seen, afraid that if you looked too closely, you would notice every insecurity they tried to hide. The Two of Pentacles feels very emotional in this reading, because I'm seeing somebody constantly going back and forth. One day they wanted to reach out, the next day they talked themselves out of it. One day they felt brave, the next day they convinced themselves to wait. One day they imagined a future, the next day they focused on reasons it wouldn't work. This back and forth energy created so much unnecessary complexity. And honestly, I think they know that now. I keep hearing, I made this harder than it needed to be. That sentence keeps repeating, because what should have been a simple truth became tangled in fear. What should have been an honest conversation became avoidance. What should have been vulnerability became distance. The more I sit with this energy, the more I feel this person looking back at certain moments with regret. Moments where they had an opportunity to be honest. Moments where they could have explained themselves. Moments where they could have trusted you with what they were feeling, yet they stayed silent. Not because they didn't care, because they didn't know how to handle what they cared about. Justice appears here, and wow, this feels like somebody finally facing themselves. Not through your eyes, through their own. there is a level of self-reflection happening that feels incredibly important. Because for a long time, they could justify their actions. They could explain them away. They could point to circumstances. They could point to timing. They could point to responsibilities. Yet somewhere deep inside, they know there were moments where fear made choices that honesty should have made. And that realization is impossible to ignore. I'm picking up on somebody replaying old situations and finally understanding how they may have looked from your perspective, understanding why you became tired, understanding why you stepped back, understanding why your energy changed. For perhaps the first time, they are seeing the impact their indecision had on somebody they genuinely cared about. The King of Swords is standing here, and this feels different from who they were before. There is a clarity developing, a willingness to acknowledge uncomfortable truths, a willingness to stop hiding behind confusion. Because confusion was easier. Confusion allowed them to delay decisions. Confusion allowed them to postpone vulnerability. Clarity demands action. Clarity demands honesty. And honestly, I feel like this person is beginning to understand that the connection didn't become complicated on its own. Many of those complications were created because they refused to say what was sitting in their heart. You know what keeps coming through? They wish they had trusted you more. They wish they had trusted themselves more. They wish they had stopped assuming the worst. There is sadness attached to that realization. Not overwhelming sadness. The kind of sadness that comes from knowing a different choice could have changed everything. And the more this person accepts those truths, the more another feeling starts rising to the surface. A feeling they spent a very long time trying not to name. A feeling that seems determined to make itself known no matter how hard they once tried to hide it. I'm seeing a very different kind of energy standing in front of this connection now. It doesn't feel restless anymore. It doesn't feel scattered. The hesitation that kept showing up earlier feels weaker here. What I'm picking up on is somebody who has spent so much time wrestling with their emotions that they are becoming exhausted by the distance itself. The Hierophant appears, and immediately I feel seriousness. Not fantasy, not wishful thinking. Seriousness. Because there comes a point where somebody has to ask themselves what they truly want. Not what feels safe. Not what feels convenient. Not what allows them to avoid risk. What they genuinely want. And honestly, I feel like this person has been arriving at the same answer over and over again. You. Not the idea of you. Not the memory of you. You. The real person. The person who saw through them. The person who challenged them. The person who made them feel understood in ways they weren't prepared for. You know what keeps coming through? This feeling that they are tired of living inside unfinished conversations. Tired of imagining what they should have said. Tired of carrying words they never spoke. Because the longer they hold everything inside, the heavier it becomes. The Ace of Cups feels incredibly emotional here. Not dramatic, not overwhelming, honest. It feels as though something inside this person is finally opening. A wall that took years to build. A wall that was made from pride, fear, insecurity, and self-protection. I'm seeing cracks in that wall. Little moments where they stop fighting what they feel. Little moments where they stop trying to analyze everything. Little moments where they simply admit the truth. And the truth feels surprisingly simple. They care. They always cared. The difference is that now they seem much more willing to acknowledge it. Okay, this is interesting. Because I don't feel like this person wants to come forward with a perfect speech. I think they know life doesn't work that way. I think they know there are questions they may not have answers for. I think they know there are wounds that may still need time. Yet what feels stronger than all of that is the desire to stop hiding. The Knight of Cups is standing here, and wow. This feels like somebody who wants movement. Not because they are suddenly fearless. Because they are tired of letting fear make every decision. You know, courage isn't the absence of fear. Sometimes courage is simply deciding that something matters more than your fear. And that is exactly what this energy feels like. I'm seeing someone rehearsing conversations in their head. Thinking about reaching out. Thinking about explaining themselves. Thinking about telling you things they should have said a long time ago. Not because they expect everything to magically fall into place. Because they want the truth to exist between you. Because they want you to know what was really happening beneath the silence. Because they want their actions to finally match what their heart has been carrying. The sun is shining over this entire reading, and honestly, there is something beautiful about that. Because throughout this story, we've seen confusion, distance, regret, fear, avoidance, growth, reflection. Yet underneath all of it, there has always been one thing connecting every card. Affection. Real affection. Not perfect affection. Human affection, the kind that makes somebody think about you when they hear a certain song, the kind that makes somebody remember random details years later, the kind that stays alive even when circumstances become complicated. I'm picking up on a person who no longer sees you as an option sitting on a shelf waiting for them. That illusion feels gone. What they see now is somebody valuable, somebody irreplaceable, somebody whose absence changed them. And honestly, I think that realization became one of their greatest teachers. Because sometimes people only understand the depth of a connection after they are forced to imagine life without it. There is warmth here, hope here, a desire to create something more honest than what existed before. Whether that honesty arrives through words, actions, or a conversation that has been waiting for a very long time, the energy feels much less focused on escaping and much more focused on showing up. One thing feels undeniable throughout this entire reading. This connection changed them. Not in the way they expected, not on the timeline they expected, yet in a way that continues unfolding every time they think about who you are, what you meant to them, and what kind of future becomes possible when fear is no longer the loudest voice in the room. One thing I keep coming back to is this. Real connections have a way of changing people. Sometimes immediately, sometimes months later, sometimes only after distance creates enough space for someone to finally see clearly. Whatever this person is learning, it feels like their understanding of this connection is very different from what it once was. And for many of you, that may be the most important message here. Not what happens next, not the timing, just the fact that what was shared between you left a lasting mark. As always, trust yourself, trust your intuition. Take what resonates and leave what doesn't. That's all I've got for you for this reading. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. I really appreciate it. You all mean a lot, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care. Okay. Bye-bye.